Are you looking for new and engaging ways to get your students up and moving in the classroom? Get out of the sit and get rut of teaching by checking out ampeduplearning.com, a two-teacher-owned and operated company in Texas that is looking to gamify teaching with creative new activities for the classroom. From their FREC resources and escape rooms for social studies and science to speed squares and task cards for math and English, they have tons of teacher-created resources. So many good things up there. And don't forget to check out their apparel designed specifically for teachers. Look good and support teachers. That's something I can get behind. Use code HoggerHistory10 to save 10% on all items and follow them on social media at Amped Up Learning for their monthly giveaways of Amazon gift cards, lessons, and apparel. Man, supporting teachers while also supporting teachers, that sounds like something we can really get behind. And don't forget to use that code HoggerHistory10 to save 10% on all items at ampeduplearning.com. What a great way to start. Now let's move on to the show. Thank you so much for supporting Inspiring Teachers.
Welcome to Inspiring Teachers, a show bringing you classroom tips, motivation, and stories from successful educators. Join Tavis Beam and Danny Hogger as they explore the why of teaching.
And welcome to another exciting edition of Inspiring Teachers. I'm here with Tavis Beam. Tavis, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great today. How you doing, Danny?
I'm doing greater than great. Can you think of a word that would fit that?
Better?
But that would make me sound like such a jerk. Well, I'm doing better than you. Let's get going with Mandy Froehlich's here. And she's in Wisconsin, and we're talking across the country to spread inspiration and excitement. Mandy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no, we're so grateful that you would take some time for us. Mandy, you do a lot. You're an author. I've been reading The Fire Within. I'm trying to get through as many chapters as I could before this morning. And it's a real page turner, as well as the things you do to advocate for teacher support and all the work with the BAM radio network. Tell us a little bit more about your journey into education, because our listeners will know your work from the many things that you've done. But how did you come to education in the first place?
Sure. So the truth is, I had come out of high school wanting to be a lawyer. And I had wanted to be a lawyer since I was like 8 years old. And I just wanted to be a lawyer. And I got into school, and I met my husband on spring break my freshman year. And I was married by the time I was 20, and I had my first child by the time I was 21. And by the time I was 27, I had 4. Oh. And so through all of that time, I was working and going to school. And eventually I had to figure out, with my 4 kids, what I was going to do. So the truth is, I went into education thinking that I liked kids and that I'd have my summers off. And that is terrible, but it is not a lie. My very first job, my first year in education, I was elementary school trained, but I landed a job as a middle school family and consumer ed cooking and sex ed teacher. And I was just thrown into it. And by the end of that year, I loved teaching so much. I knew it was exactly where I was supposed to be. So I wasn't one of those kids that played school when I was, played school all the time when I got home from school. I wasn't always looking to get into education, but I definitely landed here for a reason. During that first year, I figured out just how important relationships were, because I am a terrible cook. So I had to learn along with the kids, because half the time I didn't know what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And so I'd be thinking, oh, what should I do next week? And I'd think, oh, maybe we should have a burger challenge. That sounds good. Like, there's not too much cooking in burgers, And that's kind of how my year started off. But so I learned a lot from the kids, and just had to really focus on relationships with teaching sex ed. And
I'm going to ask a very daytime TV talk question. Ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. But how did you go from grilling it to killing it? I mean, you just do so many things. I knew I had to.
Yeah, there we go. Well, I try to be honest, because the fact of the matter is, not everybody gets into education because they are just dying to be an educator. Some people get into it for other reasons and end up loving it. And that's okay too, as long as everybody ends up in the same. Yeah, from there, I just started teaching, and I got an elementary position because that position was a 1-year limited term contract. So I couldn't keep it forever, although I would have. And I started teaching, and the end of my 5th year of teaching, I was almost one of the statistics sticks. I was disengaged and burned all those things. I figured out how much I loved education. I threw myself into it, and trying to raise 4 kids, and I finished 2 master's degrees, and I was doing all of these things, trying to just eat up everything I could. And so from there, I switched from a teacher to a technology integrator, completely blaming my district as a teacher for all of my disengagement. And so it took a lot of soul searching that first year as a tech integrator. And but I worked on it, and I came back around. And then I moved from that to a technology director, and just was so focused on teacher support. I would look around at some of the, even like the paraprofessionals, and they would have bruises on their arms from the kids hitting them, and bite marks, and going to the hospital, and all of this kind of stuff that society does not understand about our classroom. It just dawned on me, like, my goodness, people cannot continue to live like this. It's not fair. Right. And so that's where I moved.
And that story really resonates with the why of what we're doing here, because I've known so many great teachers that have burned out and left the profession. I myself have gone through my own problems, so really just feeling burnout, even though I loved the job, I loved what I was doing. I love the kids, love the parents, love the whole part of it, but it's just so overwhelming. What would you tell a teacher who might be struggling right now, about to start the school year at the beginning of 2019, and they're feeling that? What advice could you possibly give them?
Well, part of the presentation that I do on teacher mental health, because I do submit one to different conferences, and some accept it because it is a little far out. I talk about like personal adversity and professional adversity, and burnout, and secondary traumatic stress, or compassion fatigue, which is not as well known. Mm-hmm. But compassion fatigue is when you work with students who you hear about their traumas all the time, and they show trauma behaviors, and then you develop the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder from that. And then I've also recently, I just ordered a book called I think it's called something like The Demoralization of the American Teacher. Mm-hmm. And its argument is that some of what we call burnout is actually demoralization. And mm-hmm. so I'm interested in that, and I'm going to study a little bit on that too. But I think the most important thing that they can do is really educate themselves on what the symptoms of those things are. Mm-hmm. And understand that both, adversity can always cause mental health issues, depression and anxiety, or obsessive compulsive disorders. I mean, there's a wide variety of things that any high stress situation can cause. But then that also burnout and compassion fatigue have their own symptoms as well. And that for all of those, sometimes you just need professional help, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. I am very open about my depression and my anxiety and my past and things that have happened to me, because I think that the more we say words, seeing a psychiatrist, or being on medications, mm-hmm. or talking about depression and thinking about suicide, the more we say those words, the less shocking they're gonna become, mm-hmm. and the more we will be able to move on from the shock of it, mm-hmm. to actually helping people.
Right. So. Yeah. And to really spread awareness that this is something that is happening. And can you expand a little bit for us, please, and talk about, like, what would you say to districts and administrators to support teachers?
We're actually going through a process right now of trying to figure out the best way to support our teachers. We're putting in, we started a mental health advocacy committee in our district, and we focus on student support and what we can do to support their mental health. But we do have a component of our mental health grant that focuses on teachers. Mm-hmm. Right now, we're going through the process of, going, like, how can we educate people on what these things are? Mm-hmm. I often speak out about how, like, mindfulness is awesome. It's not the thing that's going to cure all. So we can't just continue to say teachers need to practice mindfulness.
It can actually make it worse sometimes in certain circumstances as they become more aware of the depression and the anxiety that they keep bottled up.
Absolutely. And not only that, if we continue to put a bunch of things on their plates and never take anything off, how do we ever expect them to practice mindfulness?
Yeah.
So we're trying to figure out how to put more time in for little things that will help to destigmatize the mental health issues, having times to talk about it, having a buddy system, getting people actually trained in mental health issues and where they can go, and what does our insurance cover, being very clear about what their first steps are. I've talked openly about how, this past December was 1 year since the last time that I was going to commit suicide, and what my process was trying to get the insurance company to cover my sessions with a counselor. It took me 2 months to get in, and had I not had friends around me to support me, I don't know how the outcome would have been different. And so I think about those people, even our students and their parents, and we often talk about, we have this student and who shows these behaviors, and sometimes it stems from the parents having mental health issues. Who do we have sitting next to these people calling 16 different places to try to get in? Because that's what I had to do in order to get an appointment,
Right.
And so setting up these buddy systems so our teachers have somebody to sit next to them and help them through some of these things. And but it's really difficult because mental health issues are very personal, and what's a trauma to me is not necessarily a trauma to you, and what heals me is not necessarily what's going to heal you either. So I think that the most that we can really do, like the best thing we can do, is the advocacy, the education of what it is, trying to give people strategies. There are a few different websites out there. One of them is anxietycanada.com. Canada has amazing resources for mental health. And anxietycanada.com is a website that's set up mostly for anxiety, but there's some depression type things on there. But it goes through a 3-step process of this is what it is. This is what you need to look for. This is what you need to do in order to help yourself. And it's very, very specific for different kinds of anxieties. And they also tell you how to set up a MAP system, which is basically knowing what your strategies are for making it through an anxiety attack.
So they really don't feel alone, and they know that there's a process that they can engage with to get the help that they need. Yep, that's tremendous work that you're doing. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that, and I know our viewers will too.
Yeah, definitely. And the dialogue, I think, is very constructive. When I was reading your blog earlier, I really liked something that you wrote, that we need to be as nice to ourselves as we are to our students and to the people around us. Some of that value can get lost when we're always being the helper, but sometimes we need help as well. What are some things that you like to do to recharge, or to feel good, or to enjoy, to kind of refresh and rejuvenate? And we're in the middle of a break from school, so what are the kinds of things that teachers could do maybe to kind of get themselves restored?
Yeah, okay, so you guys want total honesty? Here it goes. I often tell people to try and find balance and do the self-care, and I'm terrible at practicing it myself. I hit a big burnout months. I've been working 80, 90 hours a week and nonstop, just trying to keep up. And I finally decided that I've been working so hard for so long, I don't know what I like anymore. I've been so focused on education for a really long time. And when I wasn't doing education, I was with my kids. My kids are getting older, so I have a little bit of time on my own. And I would sit on a Tuesday night and I would basically just I'm not supposed to be on social media. I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm not supposed to be doing that. What do I do with myself? Over Christmas break, because I hit that kind of burnout stage and I was recognizing it, I did a lot of vegging in front of Netflix, which I have not done in years. I watched the worst show I have ever seen in my whole life. And I watched one episode and I'm like, oh, that is terrible. And then I watched the rest of the season and made it into season 2. And I don't know why I watched it, but I did. And so I did that, and I did some reading, and but I'm working on that. It is definitely a work in progress. I don't have all the answers. I'm still trying to figure it out myself. And so that's why I try to be honest, is that I don't want anyone to ever think that I am so high and mighty that I know what everybody should be doing for self-care, because I have no idea. I'm still trying to figure it out too.
Yeah, but I respect that, and I do that in front of my class as well, teaching history. Like, if you think I know everything from early man to modern US, you better believe there's blind spots, and sometimes they're pretty large. And if we were all more open and vulnerable like that with each other, we could all grow, because we could help each other grow and not be worried about being perfect and being the source of all wisdom and knowledge, but that we're all a community that can make each other more valuable. So we appreciate the words that you share and the words that you write. Can you tell people where to find your blog and your social media in case they want to find out more about you and some of the resources that you share regularly, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So my blog is www.mandyfroehlich.com, which is MandyFroehlich. Everybody forgets the first H. And then on Twitter, you can find me at Froehlich M. And on Instagram, I believe it's Froehlich Mandy or Mandy Froehlich. It's one version of those. But yeah, you can find me anywhere there. And then both of the books, The Fire Within, Lessons from Defeat That Have Ignited a Passion for Learning, and Divergent EDU, Challenging Assumptions and Limitations to Create a Culture of Innovation, are both on Amazon.
Great.
Excellent.
Well, we appreciate
Wonderful.
it so much. We hope you might join us again in the future. And thanks for being a guest on Inspiring Teachers today.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Thank you for having me.